So listen, lots of people watching this now will remember you from that long career at the BBC, but you decided to leave that role to focus on your family's apology for their history with owning slaves. Tell us about that.
Well, Leah, I think the point is that the past informs the present. And that's what I discovered, is that when in 2016, when slavery was abolished in 1834, it took till 2015 to pay off the compensation that was paid to people like my ancestors, the slave owners in the British Caribbean. Think of that. It wasn't the enslaved who got money when slavery was abolished. It was people like my ancestors. So when I learned about that in 2016, the injustice of that my family got millions of pounds in 1834 in today's money, and the enslaved got nothing. And that was on top of all the money that my family had accrued through slavery through 80 years. It just set me off on a journey with Grenadians. How does the past inform the present? What can we do to address those harms? And Leah, I'm talking to you now from Grenada, where in July, Hurricane Beryl tore through and demolished, absolutely flattened Grenada's northern islands of Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Climate change is a direct legacy of slavery. Nobody would be here if their ancestors had been kidnapped and brought here. So my hope is that when we talk about reparatory justice, the need to acknowledge the pains of the past, as the King did today when speaking at the Commonwealth, and we look to the future together and ask, what can we do? Britain has a debt, I would argue, to help these Caribbean islands suffering from climate change. It's important to apologise. That's what I learned from Grenadians. That's what our family learned. An apology can have meaning. It's not just empty words. Yes, no amount of money can make up for what's happened, but you have to start somewhere. And it starts with an acknowledgement of the pain of the past and then a discussion. What can we do?
Talk to me a bit about that apology, because you went to the island of Grenada, beautiful island, and you spoke to people in person. What was the reaction like?
Well, Leah, it was hairy. I'll be honest with you. A lot of people said, well, what does this apology do for me? Doesn't change slavery, doesn't change my position. The amount of money that you're offering to pay to repair the harms your ancestors did, and I donated £100,000, that's absolutely nothing. Well, what does that do? It's a drop in the ocean. And all of that's true. But at the same time, there was also a really positive reaction. And I'll never forget one woman saying to me, tearing up, and we both teared up, she said, I feel that with your apology, a burden that I didn't even know that I was carrying has been lifted. And this is something that the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Philip Davis, has been trying to make this point over at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, that reparatory justice isn't just about money. It's about acknowledging this painful past, acknowledging the legacies that exist today in Britain, Africa, in the Caribbean, acknowledging the psychological trauma. So the experience had so much impact, Leah. It really did. And it just made me think that as a journalist with a moral compass, there's a storytelling aspect to this. We have to tell the story of the past to the current generation so that we can face the future together and build a better future.
And it's all about, I suppose, what you're saying to me is having an open conversation is really important. What do you make of the UK government and their messaging?
Well, it's a shame, I would say. I'm actually really surprised because before he was appointed Foreign Secretary, David Lammy gave interviews to the American press, and I live in New York, saying that if he was appointed Foreign Secretary, he would be the first descendant of enslaved people to be in that role, and that would inform his approach to governing. And that gave hope, across the Caribbean, that a British Guyanese son of the Caribbean would look at these things differently. But when you hear what Keir Starmer has said, he seems extremely defensive. And of course, I can understand that. Britain is in a parlous financial state. The idea that Britain owes $18 trillion, as one estimate suggested, in slavery reparations to the Caribbean, well, that figure is terrifying. But I would hope that maybe the Prime Minister, now that he's out there meeting Commonwealth leaders, hearing from the Caribbean, that maybe he would at least follow the tone of the King a bit more and acknowledge the pain of the past. But Britain's government is terrified of apologising for slavery, Leah, because they think it will lead to then, once you apologise, you've admitted liability legally, so are you going to get slapped with the bill? But it's not about that, as the Prime Minister of the Bahamas said. It's about beginning a conversation about the wrongs of the past so that everybody can heal and move forward. And an apology is free, as a top Labour MP said. So I really hope that the Prime Minister, now that he's out there, Britain's government is talking about, well, let's try to get the international financial institutions to lend money to the Caribbean with lower interest rates, because that will be free to the British taxpayer so they can work on climate financing. I mean, that would be a start, but this is a multi-generational approach. Britain could set in a process, a way to help the Caribbean be resilient for these 150-mile-an-hour winds, which are coming with hurricanes every summer. Britain has a debt to do that, and it can be done over years, just as it took years, by the way, for the British taxpayer to pay back the money that was paid to my ancestors when slavery was abolished.